The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened with all the pomp and circumstance of a species desperately trying to look important. Which, let's be honest, they were. Ambassador Vex straightened his iridescent scales and cleared his throat with a sound like gravel in a blender. As the self-appointed leader of the Deathworlds Survivors Club, he took his responsibilities very seriously. Too seriously, if you asked literally anyone else in the galaxy. Fellow survivors, Vex announced, his voice dripping with the kind of superiority that comes from never having been truly challenged. We gather today to discuss the application of the species known as humans for membership in our exclusive organization. Captain Throck, a mountain of purple muscle and bad attitude, snorted from his reinforced chair. His home world of Brutaxis had forged him into what he considered the ultimate warrior, though he'd never actually left his climate-controlled bunker cities. Humans. Those soft pink things from that garden world? What's next? We let in the butterfly people from the flower dimension. Counselor Nim, whose nervous system was apparently wired directly to his clipboard, shuffled his papers with trembling tentacles. Well, technically, their planet is called Earth, and according to the preliminary reports, Vex interrupted with a wave of his clawed hand, they live on a world with breathable atmosphere, liquid water, and a stable climate. It's practically a resort planet. Meanwhile, we true survivors have conquered worlds that would make their worst nightmares look like a pleasant dream. Throck flexed his massive arms, each one covered in scars that he claimed were battle wounds but were actually from repeatedly walking into automatic doors. On Brutaxis, we face temperatures that reach nearly 40 degrees. The air itself tries to kill you with its dryness. Only the strongest survive. And my homeworld of Zephyria, Vex added smugly, has creatures with actual venom. Predators that hunt in packs. Sometimes it doesn't rain for entire weeks. Nim nodded frantically, though he'd never actually set foot on a dangerous world in his life. His species had evolved on a moon with all the natural hostility of a meditation garden, but he'd read about dangerous places in books, which he felt qualified him to discuss them with authority. Surely these humans, living in their paradise of moderate temperatures and abundant resources, cannot understand what it means to face true adversity, Vex continued. Why, I bet they've never even seen a predator larger than themselves, let alone survived an encounter with one. The council chamber hummed with agreement from the various representatives, each convinced that their particular flavor of surviving mild inconvenience made them the toughest species in the galaxy. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The human representative should be arriving shortly, Nim squeaked, consulting his chronometer. Perhaps we should at least hear what they have to say before we reject their application outright. Vex's laugh sounded like a garbage disposal eating silverware. Oh, by all means, let's be polite. I'm curious to see what kind of soft pampered creature this paradise world has produced. It should be quite entertaining. If only they knew. The docking bay alarms chimed with the arrival of the human vessel, and if the assembled council members had been paying attention to anything other than their own egos, they might have noticed that the ship's hull looked like it had been through a blender. A very angry, very thorough blender. Ambassador Jake Martinez stepped through the airlock with the casual confidence of someone who had absolutely no idea he was about to traumatize an entire galactic government. He was average height, average build, with the kind of easy smile that came from a species that had somehow convinced itself that living on a planet actively trying to kill them was normal. Hey there. Jake called out cheerfully, completely missing the condescending looks being exchanged around the room. Thanks for having me. Hope I'm not late. Had to dodge a solar flare on the way in, and you know how traffic gets around asteroid fields. Vex's scales rippled with barely contained amusement. A solar flare. How adorable. Welcome, human. I am Ambassador Vex, leader of the Deathworld Survivors Council. We're curious about your application to join our organization. Oh, awesome. Jake's enthusiasm was genuine and somehow made everything worse. I've heard great things about you guys. Really impressive stuff, surviving on all those harsh worlds. Throck leaned forward, his massive frame creaking the reinforced furniture. Tell us about this Earth of yours, human. What sort of challenges does your paradise world present? Jake scratched his head, looking genuinely puzzled by the question. Paradise. I mean, sure, Earth's got its nice spots, but it's not exactly what I'd call easy living. Just yesterday, before I left, there was a Category 4 hurricane spinning up in the Atlantic. Beautiful sight, really, winds hitting about 150 miles per hour. The room went very quiet. Nim's tentacles stopped shuffling papers. 150 miles per hour. Vex repeated slowly, his translator surely malfunctioning. Yeah, pretty standard for hurricane season. Though last year we had one that hit 180, now that was a show. Jake seemed to interpret their stunned silence as interest. Course, that's nothing compared to the tornadoes in the Midwest. Those babies can hit 300 miles per hour, and toss around 18-wheelers like toys. Throck's purple complexion was looking a bit pale. On Brutaxis, their strongest winds barely reached 20 miles per hour, and those were considered catastrophic events that sent everyone running for the emergency shelters. And the temperature variations must be quite mild on your world, Vex managed, his voice catching slightly. Jake laughed. Mild? You kidding? Just last month I was in Death Valley, hit 134 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 57 Celsius for you folks. Great place for a hike though, really clears the sinuses. Nim dropped his clipboard. The clatter echoed through the suddenly silent chamber like a gunshot. 57 degrees, Nim whispered. And you hiked? In this temperature? Sure, I mean, you gotta bring lots of water and watch out for heat stroke, but it's not that bad. Now if you really want extreme, you should try Antarctica in winter. Hit -128 Fahrenheit there once. That's -89 Celsius. Beautiful place, really peaceful. Nothing but ice and penguins for miles. The council members exchanged the kind of looks usually reserved for watching someone casually describe their own execution. Jake, completely oblivious to the existential crisis he was causing, settled into his chair with the relaxed posture of someone who'd never met a life-threatening situation he couldn't laugh about later. So anyway, he continued cheerfully, enough about the weather. You probably want to hear about the wildlife, right? That's always a fun topic. If the council members had been capable of screaming in unison, they would have. Instead, they sat frozen like prey animals watching a predator decide which one looked tastiest. Now Australia's got some real characters, Jake said, his eyes lighting up with the kind of fondness most people reserve for beloved pets. We've got the box jellyfish, beautiful little things, nearly transparent. One sting and you're dead in about 2 minutes. Then there's the blue-ringed octopus, tiny little guy, fits in your palm. Also deadly. Oh, and the cone snails. They look like pretty seashells, but they shoot you with a harpoon full of neurotoxin. Vex's scales had gone completely white. On Zephyria, their most dangerous creature was roughly equivalent to an angry hamster with commitment issues. And that's just the ocean, Jake continued enthusiastically. On land, we've got the funnel web spiders, aggressive little buggers, they'll actually chase you. Inland taipan snakes, one bite has enough venom to kill 100 adults. And the irukandji jellyfish I mentioned earlier. Sometimes they get caught in fishing nets, and people don't even know they're there until— Stop, Throck croaked, his warrior's voice reduced to a whisper. These creatures, they coexist with your species. Coexist? Well sure I guess. I mean we've learned to work around them. Like you don't go swimming during stinger season without a wetsuit. And you always check your shoes before putting them on. Basic stuff. Nim was making a sound like a deflating balloon. Check your shoes. Oh yeah, spiders love shoes. Dark, warm, perfect nesting spot. Same with scorpions, though they're more of a southwestern thing. We've got bark scorpions, desert hairy scorpions, Arizona bark scorpions. Really, if it's got Arizona in the name, it's probably trying to kill you. Captain Throck, who had built his entire identity around being a fearsome warrior, was now seriously questioning whether his homeworld's most dangerous creature, a rabbit-sized herbivore with slightly sharp teeth, qualified as a threat at all. But surely, Vex interjected desperately, your species has developed technology to avoid these creatures. Jake laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that made small children feel safe and experienced warriors question their life choices. Avoid them? Why would we avoid them? Steve Irwin made a whole career out of wrestling crocodiles. We've got people who keep venomous snakes as pets. There's a whole TV show about a guy who gets stung and bitten by dangerous animals just to rate the pain. He does this, voluntarily, Nim whispered. Oh yeah, Coyote Peterson's a legend. Guy's been stung by bullet ants, bitten by alligators. The works. Great educational content. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as the council members processed this information. On their worlds, even the suggestion of deliberately interacting with dangerous fauna was considered a form of insanity. Of course, Jake added thoughtfully, the really fun stuff happens when the weather gets involved. Ever been in a lightning storm? We get about 25 million cloud-to-ground lightning strikes a year. Each bolt's about 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 5 times hotter than the surface of the sun. Great fireworks show, really gets the adrenaline pumping. Vex made a sound like a dying transmission. Enjoy. Electrical discharges that are hotter than stellar surfaces. Well, I mean, you don't want to get hit by one, but watching them light up the sky, absolutely beautiful. Course, you've got to watch out for the tornadoes they sometimes spawn, but that's half the fun. The silence that followed was so complete that Jake could hear what sounded like 3 different species having simultaneous nervous breakdowns. Jake, mistaking their horrified silence for fascination, leaned forward with the enthusiasm of someone about to share his favorite hobby, which, in a way, he was. But you know what's really impressive about humans? Our endurance. We're persistence hunters. We literally evolved to chase prey until it dies of exhaustion. A human in decent shape can run a marathon. That's 26.2 miles in under 3 hours. Some of our elite athletes can do it in just over 2 hours. Throck's mouth fell open. On Brutaxis, their greatest warriors could barely manage a full sprint for 30 seconds before needing a recovery period. The idea of running continuously for hours was beyond his comprehension. And that's not even the crazy stuff, Jake continued, warming to his subject. We've got ultramarathoners who run 100 miles at a time. Dean Karnazes once ran 350 miles without stopping. Took him 80 hours, but he did it. No sleep, just kept running. Nim's tentacles were now wrapped around his head in what appeared to be either a self-soothing gesture or an attempt to prevent his brain from escaping through his ears. Then there's our pain tolerance, Jake said with the pride of someone discussing a beloved family tradition. Humans can function with injuries that would incapacitate most species. We've had people walk for miles with broken bones, work full days with migraines that feel like someone's driving railroad spikes through their skulls, and give birth while still cracking jokes. Give birth. Vex managed to croak. Oh yeah, human childbirth is a real marathon. Can last anywhere from a few hours to over 24 hours of intense pain. And here's the kicker. We do it without any modifications or medical intervention about half the time. Natural childbirth, we call it. Some women actually prefer it that way. Captain Throck looked like he was about to faint. His species reproduced by laying eggs in temperature-controlled incubation chambers, and even that was considered mildly stressful. Course, that's nothing compared to what we do for fun, Jake said, and if the council members had been capable of movement, they would have fled the room. We've got people who jump out of perfectly good aircraft for entertainment. Skydiving, we call it. Some folks do it without parachutes and just aim for trampolines or pools. Without parachutes. Nim whispered. Base jumping, wingsuit flying, free solo rock climbing, that's climbing 1,000-foot cliff faces with no ropes or safety equipment. Alex Honnold climbed El Capitan. That's a 3,000-foot vertical rock wall, with nothing but his bare hands and some chalk. Took him about 4 hours. Vex's breathing had become shallow and rapid. The concept of voluntarily placing oneself in mortal danger for recreational purposes was so alien to his worldview that his brain was simply refusing to process it. And the food, Jake exclaimed, clearly enjoying himself now. We literally poison ourselves for pleasure. Alcohol is a toxin, damages the liver, kills brain cells, can cause fatal poisoning if you drink too much. But we've built entire cultures around it. Wine, beer, whiskey, you name it. Some of our strongest drinks are over 90% alcohol. Throck made a sound like a dying engine. You consume poison, recreationally. That's not even the half of it. We eat peppers that trigger the same pain receptors as actual fire. Carolina Reapers, ghost peppers. Some of these things clock in at over 2 million Scoville units. That's hot enough to use as a weapon, and we put it in our food for flavor. We also eat raw fish, fermented shark meat, cheese full of live maggots, and something called surströmming, which smells so bad it's banned from most apartment buildings. Oh, and pufferfish. One wrong cut, and the tetrodotoxin will paralyze your nervous system, but it's considered a delicacy in Japan. Counselor Nim was now rocking back and forth, clutching his clipboard like a security blanket. They eat neurotoxic fish for pleasure. And let's not forget our sports, Jake continued, completely oblivious to the trauma he was inflicting. American football involves 2 teams of heavily armored humans running into each other at full speed for 3 hours. Hockey players hit a rubber disc with sticks while skating on frozen water at 20 miles per hour, and they consider losing teeth a badge of honor. We've got mixed martial arts, where people get into cages and beat each other unconscious for entertainment. Boxing, where the entire point is to give your opponent a concussion. And rugby, that's like American football, but without the armor. Vex was now making a continuous low whimpering sound. No armor, nope, Just shorts and a jersey. Sometimes they don't even stop when bones break. We had one guy play through a heart attack once. Another player kept going after his ear got bitten off. They just taped it back on and finished the game. Then there's our exploration habits, Jake said, really hitting his stride now. We've been to the deepest parts of our oceans, where the pressure would crush most spacecraft. James Cameron went to the Mariana Trench, 7 miles down, where the water pressure is over 1,000 times what it is at sea level. And space exploration, we strap ourselves to controlled explosions and shoot ourselves into the vacuum of space. We've walked on our moon, sent people to live in tin cans orbiting our planet for months at a time, and we're planning to colonize Mars, which is basically a frozen desert with an atmosphere that will kill you in minutes. The best part, we volunteer for this stuff. People line up for the chance to risk their lives exploring places that want to kill them. We call them astronauts, and they're considered heroes. Captain Throck's entire worldview was crumbling. Everything he'd believed about strength, courage and survival was being systematically demolished by this cheerful human, who talked about facing death like it was a pleasant weekend activity. Oh, and did I mention we keep volcanoes as tourist attractions? Jake added cheerfully. Yellowstone's got a supervolcano underneath it that could wipe out half the continent if it erupted, and we built a national park on top of it. Millions of visitors every year. The council chamber had fallen so silent that the only sound was Jake's cheerful voice and what might have been 3 different species quietly questioning their will to live. The moment of reckoning had arrived, and it was beautiful in the way that complete psychological breakdowns often are to outside observers. Captain Throck was the first to crack. His massive purple frame began to shake, and when he spoke, his voice carried the hollow tone of a warrior who had just discovered he was actually a coward with good marketing. Wait, Throck said slowly, his words measured and deliberate like someone defusing a bomb made of their own ego. Let me understand this correctly. You're telling me that humans voluntarily engage in activities that could result in death or serious injury, for entertainment? Oh yeah, absolutely. Jake nodded enthusiastically. We've got entire industries built around it. Extreme sports tourism is huge business. People pay thousands of dollars to jump off bridges, climb mountains, swim with sharks. Swim with sharks. Throck's roar shook the chamber, but it wasn't the battle cry of a warrior. It was the shriek of someone whose entire identity had just been fed through a wood chipper. You willingly enter the domain of apex predators for fun. Sure, great white sharks, tiger sharks, bull sharks. Some people do it in cages, but the real thrill seekers go cage-free. There's this thing called shark diving where you literally swim down to where they're feeding and just hang out with them. Throck's head fell into his massive hands. On Brutaxis, we have creatures we call shadow stalkers. They're about the size of your house cats, and they have tiny fangs that can barely penetrate our thick hide. We built our entire civilization around avoiding them. We live in armored cities. We travel in armed convoys. Our greatest heroes are celebrated for running away from them successfully. His voice cracked like a teenager trying to ask someone to prom. And you're telling me that humans swim with creatures that could bite them in half, for recreation? Well, shark attacks are actually pretty rare, Jake said helpfully. You're more likely to be struck by lightning, and we already established that humans think lightning is pretty cool too. Throck made a sound like a deflating balloon mixed with a dying whale. I am not a warrior. I am not even particularly brave. I am a fraud who has spent his entire life hiding from creatures that couldn't threaten a human toddler. While Throck was having his existential breakdown, Counselor Nim had progressed from nervous clipboard shuffling to what could only be described as a full-scale bureaucratic meltdown. His tentacles were flailing wildly, scattering papers everywhere as he frantically searched through his files. This doesn't make sense, Nim shrieked, his voice climbing octaves that most species couldn't even hear. According to my calculations, based on atmospheric composition, gravitational forces, and stellar radiation, Earth should be classified as a Class M paradise world. Perfectly balanced ecosystem, optimal temperature ranges, abundant water sources. Jake looked puzzled. I mean, sure, if you ignore the hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, solar flares, asteroid impacts, ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, magnetic pole reversals, and the occasional mass extinction event. Mass extinction events. Nim's tentacles were now moving so fast they were a blur. How many mass extinction events have occurred on your world? Oh, depends how you count them. 5 major ones, but really there's been probably dozens of smaller ones. The dinosaurs got wiped out about 65 million years ago by an asteroid. Before that, The Permian extinction killed off about 90% of all life on the planet. Fun fact, we're probably in the middle of the 6th mass extinction right now, but this time it's mostly our fault. Nim stared at his files, then at Jake, then at his files again. You're causing your own mass extinction event. Well, not intentionally. Climate change, habitat destruction, pollution, overfishing. We're working on fixing it, but you know how it is with large-scale environmental management. No, Nim whispered, his tentacles going limp. No, I don't know how it is. My species has never faced anything more challenging than a mild seasonal pollen increase. We have 14 different government agencies dedicated to monitoring dust levels. Dust levels. He threw his clipboard across the room, where it clattered against the wall with the finality of a career bureaucrat accepting that his life's work was meaningless. I've spent 300 years cataloging planetary hazards, and the most dangerous thing I've ever documented was a moon with slightly irregular tides. I wrote a 12,000-page report on the potential dangers of a 2% humidity fluctuation. That sounds very thorough, Jake offered supportively. Thorough. Nim's laugh was the sound of sanity taking a permanent vacation. Humans are living through their own mass extinction event, and treating it like a minor inconvenience. You've survived 5 previous apocalypses, and evolved past them. I once filed an emergency report, because our solar system's star had a minor fluctuation that increased surface temperature by 0.001 degrees. But it was Ambassador Vex, whose breakdown was the most spectacular, if only because he had the furthest to fall. As the self-appointed leader of the Deathworlds Survivors Club, he had built his entire political career on being the toughest, most battle-hardened diplomat in the galaxy. Watching that carefully constructed image crumble was like watching a skyscraper collapse in slow motion. This cannot be correct, Vex said, his scales shifting through colors that didn't have names. There must be some translation error. Surely you don't mean that humans regularly expose themselves to temperatures that would be instantly fatal to my species. Oh, we definitely do, Jake confirmed cheerfully. Saunas regularly hit 200 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 93 Celsius. People sit in them for fun, then jump into ice-cold water afterward. It's called contrast therapy, supposed to be good for circulation. Vex's scales were now cycling through what appeared to be the color spectrum of a nervous breakdown. 200 degrees. On Zephyria, our emergency protocols activate if the temperature rises above 35 degrees. We have planetary evacuation procedures for heat waves. 35 degrees Celsius. That's like 95 Fahrenheit. That's barely warm for us. We wear shorts and t-shirts in that weather. You wear less clothing as temperatures become more dangerous. Well, yeah, you want to stay cool. Though in really hot weather, like in the desert, you actually want to cover up more to protect from sun exposure. UV radiation from our star can cause cancer if you get too much of it. Your star is trying to give you cancer. Vex's voice had gone up about 3 octaves. All stars produce UV radiation, but yeah, our ozone layer took some damage a few decades back, so we get a bit more than we used to. That's why we invented sunscreen, SPF protection factors and all that. Vex was now making a sound like a tea kettle, having an argument with a dial-up modem. You invented chemical compounds to protect yourself from your own star's attempts to kill you, and this is considered normal. Pretty much. Kids learn about sun safety in elementary school. Wear sunscreen, drink water, don't stay out too long during peak hours. Basic stuff, Vex repeated numbly. On Zephyria, we have a planet-wide celebration every time our star manages to peek through the cloud cover for more than 5 minutes. We call it Sunday, and it's our most sacred holiday. His scales had now settled into a pattern that could only be described as existential crisis camouflage. I have spent 50 years of my life building a reputation as a survivor, as someone who faced the harshest conditions in the galaxy, and emerged stronger for it. My homeworld has gentle breezes, mild temperature variations, and our most dangerous predator is a herbivore that faints when startled. I wrote poetry about conquering the savage wilderness of Zephyria. I gave speeches about the warrior spirit forged in the crucible of adversity. I convinced myself and everyone else that surviving a world with occasional light drizzle made me some kind of galactic badass. His laugh was the sound of dignity being fed through a shredder, and now I discover that humans consider temperatures that would kill me instantly to be shorts weather. That they swim with creatures that could eat me in one bite. That they voluntarily consume substances that would shut down my nervous system. That they jump out of aircraft for entertainment. Vex stood up slowly, his movements carrying the weight of someone whose entire worldview had just been drop-kicked into the sun. I am not a survivor. I am not a warrior, I am not even particularly resilient. I am a pampered, soft-scaled pretender who couldn't survive one day on what humans consider a pleasant vacation destination. The 3 alien council members sat in the wreckage of their former self-images, while Jake looked around the room with growing concern. Hey, are you guys okay? You all look a little pale, well except for Captain Throck, who's more purple, but you know what I mean. The moment of dawning realization hit Jake like a freight train carrying a cargo of awkward social situations. His expression shifted from concern to understanding to barely contained amusement as he took in the scene before him. 3 supposedly elite galactic survivors having simultaneous nervous breakdowns because a human had described a normal Tuesday on Earth. Oh, Jake said slowly, his grin spreading like sunrise over a particularly amusing disaster. Oh, you guys thought Earth was a paradise world, didn't you? The silence that followed was so profound it could have been bottled and sold as a meditation aid. You actually believed that humans were soft, pampered creatures from a garden world. Jake continued, his voice filled with the kind of delight usually reserved for discovering that your worst enemy had accidentally signed up for a clown college newsletter. That's why you were so skeptical about letting us into your little survivors club. Vex made a sound like a deflating whoopee cushion trying to maintain its dignity. We may have made some assumptions based on preliminary data. Preliminary data, Jake repeated, savoring the words like fine wine. Let me guess. You saw that we have breathable atmosphere, liquid water and a stable orbit and figured we lived in some kind of cosmic spa resort. Nim, who had progressed from clipboard clutching to full fetal position, managed a weak nod. Jake's laughter filled the chamber, and it was the kind of warm, genuine amusement that somehow made everything exponentially worse for the 3 aliens. Oh man, wait until I tell the folks back home about this. The Galactic Council's elite Deathworld survivors were scared to let humans join their club because they thought we were too soft. This is not amusing, Throck managed, though his voice suggested that his conviction was about as sturdy as a house of cards in a hurricane. Oh, it absolutely is, Jake assured him, wiping tears from his eyes. Especially since I should probably mention, I'm considered one of the soft humans. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. 3 sets of alien eyes focused on Jake with the intensity of someone watching their house burn down while the fire department explained that they'd brought marshmallows instead of water. Soft, Vex croaked. Yeah, I work in diplomacy. I've got a desk job. I spend most of my time in climate-controlled offices talking to people and filling out paperwork. The only physically demanding thing I do is yoga twice a week, and I complain about that. Jake's smile grew wider as he watched the implications sink in. You want to meet some real tough humans, you should talk to our military folks, or our extreme athletes, or just about anyone who works in manual labor. Construction workers, farmers, oil rig operators, deep-sea fishermen, smoke jumpers, search and rescue teams, those are the people who actually have physically demanding jobs. Nim made a sound like air escaping from a punctured tire. There are harder humans. Oh, absolutely. I mean, take our military special forces. Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Marine Force Recon. These guys train by carrying 100-pound packs through swamps, staying awake for days at a time and practicing combat in conditions that would kill most people. They consider hypothermia a minor inconvenience and sleep deprivation a character-building exercise. Throck's eyes had gone completely vacant, like someone had unplugged his brain and forgotten to plug it back in. Or our astronauts, Jake continued with the enthusiasm of someone who had just discovered the perfect gift for someone they didn't particularly like. These people strap themselves to controlled explosions powerful enough to level city blocks, get shot into the vacuum of space, and then spend months in a tin can where literally everything is trying to kill them. Radiation, vacuum, mechanical failures, supply shortages, and they consider it routine. Then there are our explorers and researchers. We've got people who spend months at a time in Antarctica, where temperatures drop to -100 degrees Fahrenheit and the wind can knock you off your feet. Marine biologists who dive to depths where the pressure would crush a tank, volcano researchers who collect lava samples while standing on active volcanoes, and storm chasers who drive directly into tornadoes for scientific data. Vex had begun making a continuous low humming sound, like a computer trying to process information that exceeded its capacity. And those are just the professionals, Jake said, really enjoying himself now. We've got regular people who run ultramarathons through Death Valley in summer, climb Mount Everest as a weekend hobby, and free dive to depths that would implode most submarines. For fun. He paused, pretending to think. Oh, and there was this one guy, Ernest Shackleton, who got trapped in Antarctic ice for almost 2 years. When his ship got crushed by the ice, he led his entire crew across hundreds of miles of the most hostile terrain on the planet, then sailed a tiny boat through the worst seas on Earth to get help. Everyone survived. We made it into a children's book. Children's book, Nim whispered. Yeah, it's considered an inspiring story for kids. If you work hard and don't give up, you can overcome any obstacle, that kind of thing. Jake's expression suddenly brightened as if he'd just remembered something delightful. Oh, that reminds me. I should probably let you know, the human military liaison team is arriving next week for the formal integration ceremonies. You know, once you approve our membership, they're really excited to meet you guys and share some of their training techniques. The three aliens exchanged looks of pure unadulterated terror. Training techniques. Vex managed. Sure. Cultural exchange, you know how it is. They're bringing some demonstration equipment, obstacle courses, survival gear, combat simulation. Nothing too intense, just some basic human military training exercises. They figured it would be a great team-building experience. Captain Throck made a sound like a dying engine trying to start one last time. Basic human, military training. Yeah, they're really looking forward to it. Colonel Martinez. He's my cousin actually. He was telling me about this great bonding exercise they do, where you have to survive in hostile terrain for a week with minimal supplies. Builds character, he says. The silence that followed was so complete that Jake could hear what sounded suspiciously like three different species, quietly calculating the fastest possible route to the nearest galaxy. So, Jake said cheerfully, completely oblivious to the fact that he had just traumatized 3 civilizations worth of leadership, should we get started on the paperwork? I've got the membership application right here, and I'm really excited to get this partnership underway. Without a word, Vex reached across the table and pressed the emergency approval button that was supposed to be used only in cases of imminent galactic catastrophe. A green light flashed, indicating that humanity had been granted immediate full membership in the Deathworlds Survivors Club with all associated privileges and responsibilities. Motion passed. Vex announced in a voice that suggested his soul had left his body and was currently looking for alternate accommodations. Welcome to the club. Meeting adjourned, permanently. As the 3 aliens fled the chamber with the desperate urgency of people escaping a burning building full of angry wasps, Jake pulled out his communication device and dialed home. Hey Mom. Yeah, the meeting went great. They approved our membership immediately. Really friendly folks, very enthusiastic about human culture. Though I think they might be a little overwhelmed by all the information I shared. They seemed pretty eager to wrap things up. He paused, listening to his mother's response. Oh, they're definitely excited about the military exchange program. I've never seen anyone move so fast to approve something. Yeah, I think this is going to be the start of a beautiful friendship. As Jake chatted happily with his mother about the successful first contact, emergency alarms began sounding throughout the Galactic Council complex. 3 different species had simultaneously declared planetary emergencies and were requesting immediate relocation to the furthest possible corners of the galaxy. Somewhere in the distance, a computer system was frantically reclassifying Earth from Class M Paradise World to Class X Apocalypse Nightmare. Approach only with extreme caution and updated wills. And Jake Martinez, diplomatic representative of humanity, continued his pleasant phone conversation, completely unaware that he had just caused the greatest existential crisis in galactic political history. Which, when you think about it, was a pretty typical Tuesday for a human.